Good morning, dear friends, and welcome to the session today. We are starting a new chapter, and we're starting Caitanya-Caritamrita, and it is usually time for Srimad Bhagavatam. We have Patri today, and he is very renowned for establishing a community in Nepal. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to be in the association of devotees, even if it's just online. It's not a question of distance. It's amazing that we are all gathered today here. It's an incredible family of Krishna, which is not simply international, it is inter-universal, inter-galaxy. We will start with a bhajan today.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo More Toma Vina Hai Dayadu Jagat Samsare Adita Pavana Hetu Tava Vatara Samapatita Prabhu Napai Deara Aha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Navakripa Bodhipai Kripa Balokana Goro Ami Boro Dukhi Daya Goro Sita Patri Advaita Gosai Oma Kripa Bodhipai Caitanya-Nitai Mahaprabhu Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha Prabhu Lokanatha Jaya Guru Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa Ramachandra Sangamage Narottama Dasa Jaya Guru Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Nitai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Gora Hari Nitai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Gora Hari Bo Hare Krishna Padita Pavana Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki Hare Krishna Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So today we will begin to read from Caitanya-Caritamrita, and we're starting Adi-lila, and we're taking a small little aspect from a giant ocean. From the ocean, we're taking one little drop just to understand the taste of it, of this nectarine ocean. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, and Ambudhi meaning an ocean. And we will read from Adi-lila, the first chapter. We will read the shloka from 44th till the 48th. These are the 4 very important shlokas which explain to us the nature of the Lord. Just wanting to check that everyone can hear me okay? Yes, we can hear you, but we cannot see you moving. The sound is fine, but your image is frozen, but at least we can hear you. Well, the main thing is to hear. And it's important to see with our eyes, not only with our eyes, but with the spiritual path. It's important to listen. And so I will read the shlokas in a moment.
Okay. Yadhyapi amara guru chaitanya dasa tathapi janiye ami sandhara prakasha.
Translation. Although I know that my spiritual master is a servitor of Sri Chaitanya, I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. Glory to Srila Prabhupada. Purport. Every living entity is essentially a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual master is also his servant. Still, the spiritual master is a direct manifestation of the Lord. With this conviction, a disciple can advance in Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master is none different from Krishna because he is a manifestation of Krishna. Lord Nityananda, who is Balaram himself, the first direct manifestation or expansion of Krishna, is the original spiritual master. He helps Lord Krishna in his pastimes, and he is a servant of the Lord. Every living entity is eternally a servant of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Therefore, the spiritual master cannot be other than a servant of Lord Chaitanya. The spiritual master's eternal occupation is to expand the service of the Lord by training disciples in a service attitude. The spiritual master never poses as the Supreme Lord himself. He is considered a representative of the Lord. The revealed scriptures prohibit one's pretending to be God, but a bona fide spiritual master is a most faithful and confidential servant of the Lord, and therefore deserves as much respect as Krishna. And I will just speak about this shloka in 2 or 3 words. First I will say the Mangalacharam.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shiyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanditam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sakhitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanditam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Ajanulambita Bujau Kanakavadatau Sankirtanai Kapitarau Kamalayatamksau Vishvambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palau Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karuna Vataro Vancha Kalpataro Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
So the spiritual master gives liberation to his devotees. It is described that the relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master is non-different than that with the Supreme Lord. And even though the spiritual master acts as a most humble servant, the disciple must see in him a manifestation which is appearing to us. It's a manifestation of the Lord. An important shloka from the Srimad Bhagavatam says that a person must know that the Acharya is me and never show disrespect to the Acharya. An Acharya must not be envied and must not be considered a simple mortal being because he is a representative of the demigod. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:17-27, spoken by Lord Sri Krishna when he was questioned by Uddhava regarding the four social and spiritual orders of society. He was specifically instructing how a brahmachari should behave under the care of a spiritual master. A spiritual master is not an enjoyer of facilities offered by his disciples. He is like a parent. Without the attentive servant of his parents, a child cannot grow to manhood. Similarly, without the care of the spiritual master, one cannot rise to the plane of transcendental service. The spiritual master is also called Acharya, or transcendental professor of spiritual service. Science. Manu Samhita 2.140 explains the duties of an Acharya, describing that a bona fide spiritual master accepts charge of disciples, teaches them the Vedic knowledge with all its intricacies, and gives them their second birth. The ceremony performed to initiate a disciple into the study of spiritual science is called Upaniti, or the function that brings one nearer to the spiritual master. One who cannot be brought nearer to a spiritual master cannot have a sacred thread, and thus he is indicated to be a Shudra. The sacred thread worn on the body of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya is a symbol of initiation by the spiritual master. It is worth nothing if worn merely to boast of high parentage. The duty of the spiritual master is to initiate a disciple with the sacred thread ceremony, and after this samskara, or purificatory process, the spiritual master actually begins to teach the disciple about the Vedas. A person born a Shudra is not barred from such spiritual initiation, provided he is approved by the spiritual master, who is duly authorized to award a disciple the right to be a Brahmana, if he finds him perfectly qualified. In the Vayu Purana, an Acharya is defined as one who knows the import of all Vedic literature, explains the purpose of the Vedas, abides by their rules and regulations, and teaches his disciples to act in the same way. Only out of his immense compassion does the personality of Godhead reveal himself as the spiritual master. Therefore, in the dealings of an Acharya, there are no activities but those of transcendental love and service to the Lord. He is the personality of servitor, Godhead. It is worthwhile to take shelter of such a steady devotee, who is called Ashraya Vigraha, or the manifestation or form of the Lord, of whom one must take shelter. If one poses himself as an Acharya but does not have an attitude of servitorship to the Lord, he must be considered an offender, and this offensive attitude disqualifies him from being an Acharya. The bona fide spiritual master always engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By this test, he is known to be a direct manifestation of the Lord and a genuine representative of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Such a spiritual master is known Acharya Deva, influenced by an envious temperament and dissatisfied because of an attitude of sense gratification, mundaneness, criticize a real Acharya. In fact, however, bona fide acharya is non-different from the personality of Godhead, and therefore to envy such an acharya is to envy the personality of Godhead himself. This will produce an effect subversive to transcendental realization. As mentioned previously, a disciple should always respect the spiritual master as a manifestation of Sri Krishna. But at the same time, one should always remember that the spiritual master is never authorized to imitate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. False spiritual masters pose themselves as identical with Sri Krishna in every respect, and to exploit the sentiments of their disciples, but such impersonalists can only mislead their disciples, for their ultimate aim is to become one with the Lord. This is against the principles of devotional cult. The real Vedic philosophy is Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, which establishes everything to be simultaneously one with and different from the personality of Godhead. Sri Raghunatha Das Goswami confirms that this is the real position of a bona fide spiritual master and says that one should always think of the spiritual master in terms of his intimate relationship with Mukunda, Sri Krishna. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha has clearly defined that a pure devotee's observation of the spiritual master and Lord Shiva as one with the personality of Godhead exists in terms of their being very dear to the Lord, not identical with him in all respects. Following in the footsteps of Srila Raghunatha Dasa Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami, later acharyas like Srila Vidvanath Chakravarti Thakur have confirmed the same truth. In his prayers to the spiritual master, Srila Vidvanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms that all the revealed scriptures accept the spiritual master to be identical with the personality of Godhead, because he is a very dear and confidential servant of the Lord. Gaudiya Vaishnavas therefore worship Srila Gurudeva, the spiritual master, in the light of his being the servitor of the personality of Godhead. In all the ancient literatures of devotional service and in the more recent songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and other unalloyed Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is always considered to be either one of the confidential associates of Srimati Radharani or a manifested representation of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. Hare Krishna. This is a very important message to us, which states that the spiritual master is like a messenger from the spiritual world, of the supreme will of the Lord. Such an analogy comes that if we want a visa to a different country, it's important to go to an embassy and make an application for that visa. And similarly, we need a particular qualification to be allowed into the country. And when the embassy accepts us and gives us access, then we have this qualification to access such a country. And in such a way to access the spiritual world, it's important not to go to the border of the country and then just be allowed in. It's important to get a recommendation and blessings of the representative of the Supreme Embassy of the Lord. And we can see that Caitanya-Caritamrita, which means charita, meaning character, and Amrita is eternity. So Chaitanya, Amrita, is the eternal force, the eternal character, the eternal existence of the character of the Lord in his eternal pastimes. And it is a personal feature of the Lord. And he explains that the first chapter allows us access into this kingdom of eternal Amrita, eternal nectarine, nectar of the spiritual world, through the spiritual master. And Kaviraj Goswami himself gives a prayer to his spiritual teachers, and he says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes in the form of a devotee, but he is the Supreme Lord. Krishna takes the form of his own devotee. And Srila Prabhupada says 5,000 years ago, Lord Sri Krishna said, I am the Supreme Lord, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. Reasonable people, intelligent people understand that I am the source of everything. There is nothing superior to me. Therefore, abandon all speculation and all other religious practices and surrender unto me. Surrender unto me alone, and I will protect you from everything. And he said to surrender, but he never showed how to do this. And so it is said that 5,000 years later, the Lord thought, oh, I should probably show them, because in the Kali Yuga, everyone is very disturbed by coronavirus. They're very lazy. They are unfortunate. Therefore, I will come and show them how to surrender to the Lord. And so Prabhupada says that just like an excellent teacher, he takes a small student, he takes his hand into his own hand and writes A, B, C, D, and it is said Abhavedika. And it is a lila of acting like a student. And it is not that the teacher himself is learning how to write. No, he comes to the level of the student in order to teach him. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya is the original teacher. Just like Lord Nityananda, who is Balaram. It is said in the Bhagavatam that they descend out of their causeless mercy to stretch out a helping hand. It is said that just like the sun and the moon, they are like Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, they have risen on the horizon. And by your supreme will, everything is happening. The sun and the moon are rising on time. And therefore, by the will of the Lord, he comes himself out of his own free will and causeless mercy to save all the conditioned souls, who are by their nature, charita, the behavior of the spiritual entity, of the living entity, is that they are spiritual, nityadas, they are eternal servitors of the Lord. We are not slaves of the Lord who are being hit with a rod. No, the Lord has a taste, a rasa. Rasa Igraha. Rasa Raj Sri Krishna. He enjoys the rasa, the relationships with his living entities. And Lord Chaitanya descends to show how to establish that connection with the Lord. It seems very trivial. All religions say we are the slaves of the Lord, but it's very impersonal, not very specific. And Srila Prabhupada says that the only Vedic wisdom is Sanatan Dharma, which must teach people who is the Lord and how to love him. And it is important to understand who the Lord is before you can properly love him. Who does he associates? Who are his associates? Who are his parents? We even have the phone number of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And so this telephone number can destroy all of the obstacles of Kali Yuga. This is our medicine. Lord Chaitanya comes to give us that medicine and to teach us this relationship with the Lord. Shantaras is neutral relationship, Dasyaras, the servant of the Lord. Sankyaras, friendships. Vatsalya is parental relationship, and Madhurya, beloved of the Lord, intimate relationship with the Lord. And all of this is defines that the Lord is a person. It's a very revolutionary approach, in effect, because the main religion, the mass of religion movements are very impersonal. I listened recently to Bhakti-Vigyan Maharaj lecture, who was saying that he was in Rome, in the Vatican, and when he was walking along the squares and the boulevards and the corridors and huge statues of the Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ, and at the end of the corridor there is a dove with light coming from it, which personifies the Spirit of the Lord. There is a Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And we can see that there are many forms of the Lord, but at the end, there is just impersonal light. And it is said that this is nirvishesha shunyavadi, this is impersonal understanding of the Lord. But Caitanya-Caritamrita, it describes that by the mercy of the spiritual masters, we can understand not only the Lord, but to revive our initial eternal relationship with the Lord. And so, who is the spiritual master? Lord Chaitanya is the first initial spiritual master. And then there is Nityananda Prabhu, who is the initial Balaram, who gives spiritual strength. Without the mercy of the spiritual master, we have no strength to serve the spiritual master. If we do not have Bala, we do not have strength. The Acharyas say,
Krishna bole. Yogyata vichara kichu nahi paaye. Tumhara shakati ache. Krishna se tumhara Krishna diti paro. Tumhara shakati ache.
Krishna is the pure representation of the Lord. It is said that the Lord is in the heart of his pure devotees, and because they can give Krishna, they are like the conductors, they are like the transmitters of the Lord. The Lord is Sakshat Hari, and the spiritual master is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sakshat Hari, he is himself the Lord Hari, like all the spiritual texts say. But then again, Priya Eva Tasya, because he is very dear to the Lord, therefore he carries within himself the desires of the Lord, just as they are. And there are many spiritual teachers. There is the Acharyas, and then there is the Vadadhara, like Srivas Pandit, who is an empowered devotee, who is a partial representation of the Lord, and they are the representatives of the Lord. It is given an example. An example is given that there is a big electric station, power station, and in our house there is a power point. And inside this dock, this power point, there is the same energy flowing as from the electric station, but the intensity of that electricity is different. We cannot charge our phone from the electric station itself. No, it is the source of all energy. But then there are wires which go along the streets, and they are gradually connected to our house. And I was meditating recently that in different countries there are different adapters. There are 2-point power points and 3-point power points. And in America, in order to connect to the power point, you need a particular adapter. And in Thailand, you need another huge power point. In India, there is the same as in Russia, the 2-point power point. Then there's 3 power point, like in England. And so you need an adapter for all of these power points, like we need as tourists in order to connect to the docks. And similarly, there is the spiritual master, and the spiritual master, depending on the place and circumstance, time, place and circumstance, he takes different forms in order to become that adapter which can connect us to the power station. And the spiritual master is not this one form, in the form of a Diksha Guru. There are many spiritual teachers, and the Srimad Bhagavatam says that anyone and everyone can become a spiritual master. Even a small child, an ant, can be a spiritual master. Even a prostitute or a whimsical person, a hunter, they can be spiritual masters. We can see the hand of the Lord in everything and everyone. But the spiritual master is like a pure adapter through whom this Shakti, this spiritual energy flows, because he is connected directly to his own spiritual master through the parampara. Krishna says in the 4th canto of the 2nd chapter, Parampara, there are 4 paramparas, and we can always see that people sometimes buy a book and he becomes some great teacher, but nobody can become a genuine teacher without first becoming a student. a humble servant. And it is very easy to see in the spiritual master as a monk, as a renounced person, but it is very difficult for simple people to see a student within his spiritual master, because a spiritual master is first and foremostly a great disciple of another great teacher. Therefore it is said,
Nasam rishim yesya matam na bhinnam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajjanoi nagata sappanta.
This means that simply by dry arguments it is impossible to understand the supreme truth, because the path to the supreme truth has already been laid down by great Mahajans, great souls who have paved the way along this path, and therefore we must follow in their footsteps. Follow step by step in their footsteps, because this material world is a minefield and you never know when you can step on a mine and it will explode. And this world is compared to an ocean of misery and suffering. There are all sorts of sufferings of the body, from other living beings, from nature, etc. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya gives a great instruction to his disciples, to Sanatana Goswami and other disciples in Prayag. By the mercy of my guru, he sent me to Prayag, where a great king has sacrificed the land, and my guru has asked to build a temple there. Therefore, the first thing we did when we went there, we went to the place where Lord Chaitanya gave an instruction to Rupa Goswami, where the incredible shloka of Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gora Tvishe Namaha, where this shloka was written, because Lord Chaitanya himself has only composed 8 shlokas, but he, as the Supreme Lord, he empowered his disciples to carry out the mission of writing many books. And so Lord Chaitanya didn't want to take credit for everything. He gave this credit to his close devotees who were very humble. And Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, Radhaganadasa Goswami, they gave this service to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Some of them even said, don't even mention our names in Caitanya-Caritamrita. If you do mention it, we won't tell you anything. Therefore, Kaviraj Goswami took a very humble position, that he is simply a servant of all of his spiritual masters. He is simply carrying out the mission of Lord Nityananda, who gave him this mission. I simply want to be an instrument in their hands. He never wanted to be a king or god. No, he just wanted to be a representative of the Lord, like a small speck of dust. It is said that if you want to become an atom bomb in the hands of the Lord, then first you must become a tiny little speck of dust. And he practiced this spiritual teachings in his life, and he was continuously immersed in the service of the Lord. He was completely self-satisfied and happy. It is foolish to think that in some way we can thank our spiritual master and repay our spiritual master, because the spiritual master is self-satisfied, just like the Lord. He is very self-satisfied. He's very, very full of happiness, and he gives the access of this happiness. Just like when a container is filled, everything that overflows is what he gives to all of the other people. It's not like he himself is completely starving, but he's still feeding everyone. No, he is sharing everything that he has with everyone else. As it is said about Chaitanya and Nityananda, they were so immersed in this joy and happiness that they gave it to everyone and anyone. The qualified or the unqualified, they did not care. They did not make this distinction. They just carried on to give this to everybody. And whoever didn't want to drown in this ocean of mercy and joy, they would simply just drown them in that nectar and happiness anyway. Today they are happy, tomorrow they're even happier, and the third day they are just burning up from all the happiness. And it is said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a spiritual teacher, he showed us this example. How such an incredible love and joy towards the Lord can be experienced in the material body. The material body cannot even contain the love and the ecstasy which can be experienced towards the Lord. It's not that we are told, love your Father, because how do we love the Father? And there are different systematic approaches, different steps which must be undergone in order to act in this world. What rules should we follow? How should we play this game in order to reach this prize, which is pure love of Godhead? Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that there are 8 steps, as we know. Before you reach prema. Prema is the ultimate love. We shouldn't imitate this. We must go through all of these different steps of cleansing ourselves. First, there must be faith, at least, or trust. Just shraddhana, that nobody is trying to fool you. There was a hippie who I spoke to, who understood that even though he may not have understood what I was saying philosophically, he understood that I was not fooling or trying to cheat him. Then, after Shravana, there is the association with devotees. Then there is anartha-nivriti, when all of our bad qualities are coming out. And then there is the surgery which takes place, amputations. When we are getting chopped and cut, it's very difficult, it's very painful because of all of our material attachments. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya came in order to give us an anesthesia, the spiritual name, the holy name of the Lord. Ananda Bhuti Vardhanam. We become overfilled with joy, even if we are being operated on, and all of our anarthas and bad qualities are being taken out. We are still in absolute ecstasy because we are ready to sacrifice all of our material attachments.
Vairagya vidyam nija bhakti yoga shikshartamekah purushah puranaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradhari Kripam Buddhisyastamaham Prapaddi.
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says that Lord Chaitanya came to give us two things, renunciation and knowledge, alongside bhakti. Therefore, the mercy of the Lord can cut us from these material desires. Just like Kunti Maharani prayed, please, dear Lord, cut all my attachments to this material world, so that I can flow just like the Ganges to your lotus feet. And the spiritual master teaches us, he gives us certain difficulties along our way so we can take responsibility and go through different difficulties. And he tells us different stories that Acharya is he who teaches in his example, not simply giving us philosophy, who's pretentious, but somebody who actually, you look at him and all he's doing, he has given a great example in every of his actions. Not somebody that sits in the chair all day. He is not an Acharya. somebody who has completely surrendered to the Lord. Just like Lord Chaitanya, who left his 70-year-old mother and his wife. And Prabhupada writes this as a very exceptional circumstance. A person, in order to fulfill a certain mission, can sacrifice everything. But this does not mean that all of us should become monks and nuns. No, he has shown us example of how to live properly in a family life, how to be a proper representative, of how to be a student, how to be selfless servant. And Lord Chaitanya even washed everybody's clothes by the river and helped them carry it. In the Adi-lila, it is described how in his childhood pastimes and his teenage pastimes, how did he act? In order to show us how a great personality acts. And Srila Prabhupada says that Lord Chaitanya came himself, just like that teacher who takes the hand of his student and starts to write without any mistakes. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya, to personally show, step by step, how to exit this maze of the material world into the light of the spiritual knowledge and to obtain the supreme goal of prema. And he wanted that all of his devotees, and he gave this advice, this instruction to his disciples. Lokanathas, go to Vrindavan. Sanatana, go to Vrindavan and write books. Haridas Thakur, he was given a different instruction. Raghunath Das Goswami was also given a separate instruction. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And the representatives of Kulinagram and the devotees would come every year to the Ratha Yatra and they would continuously have spiritual discussions. Srivas Thakur, how many spiritual instructions he got. Therefore, Caitanya-Caritamrita is like a pearl necklace of all of the instructions of the Lord, so that we can walk along the minefield and avoid all of the explosives. And we must be aware that there is Ninidhyasana. Shravanam, Mananam, Ninidhyasanam. Everything we should think about, to understand, to absorb, analyze. We shouldn't just blindly accept. How should we follow the path of Sri Chaitanya, and how should we distribute this knowledge to others? One of the instructions was to become a spiritual master ourselves. Every single one of us should become a spiritual master, to give this knowledge to others, and in such a way a person can become dear to Krishna. Priya Evatasya, which means the spiritual master is very dear to Krishna because he gives this knowledge to everyone. Krishna says, who is the most dear to me? The one who gives this knowledge to others. That person who gives this knowledge to others, according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is Buridharhana. The person who dedicates his life to give this knowledge to others, he becomes very dear to Krishna. And our aim is to become dear to Krishna. And this is what the spiritual master teaches us. How do we distribute this knowledge to others? It's not that we'll just grow 4 arms and we'll be levitating above the ground, then we'll become the spiritual master. No, this is not the case. It says that even if we are 1 month in Krishna consciousness, we are superior to those who are 1 week in Krishna consciousness, and we can become spiritual masters to them. And those who know nothing at all, there is this chain. Even a dog can be a spiritual master. And there is different categories of different teachers. There's Shiksha Gurus, Diksha Gurus. Therefore, everyone can show the way. And I can tell so many stories about how people have come to Krishna consciousness. His Grace Caitanya-Caritamrita Prabhu has given an incredible book about how people have come to Krishna consciousness. It is called Varta Pradarshikam. How do we come to Krishna consciousness? It is the person who just points to the spiritual way. For example, if we distribute books, I in my time in the Soviet Union, in Russia, distributed so many books. And it was this great secret. I didn't know if I could even myself find the way out. I knew that if I distribute loads of books, at least one person will become a devotee and then go to God. And then he can help me, because then he'll be my guru, because I have helped him by distributing him a book. And this is the best investment, to give books to people. Give people Krishna. To give people a smile, and it will return not once over back to you. Prabhupada says, I can be qualified or unqualified, this is not important. My name is Patri. Patri means a letter or a postman. So Patri is he who carries the messages. He is like a secretary of Krishna. He is he who between Varshal and Nandagram would carry the letters for Krishna. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya the mission of Lord Chaitanya is simply to give this message as it is, without changing anything. Therefore, it is important to use your mind. When the spiritual master gives us the instruction, we must engage our minds. How are we going to carry out this instruction? We're not simply sheep that go bare and follow. Prabhupada says, tax our brains. How do we distribute this Krishna consciousness? Because this is the only thing that can save this world. Such a strange world. Everyone is in shock and in fear walking around here. Therefore, if a person gets the remedy, he should distribute it to others. Unless he does this, he is a criminal. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calls this a spiritual movement. He says, just like the Supreme Lord has told us, and Sri Chaitanya has told us, in every town and in every village, this movement must go on. And who's going to do this if not every single one of us? One time, Burijan Prabhu has told me that once he was sitting with his wife, with Srila Prabhupada, and they were sitting, and in the Philippines this was, they were watching a show, and before this show began, Srila Prabhupada began his japa. And before he began his japa, he said to Burijan Prabhu, do you know what is my greatest desire? Prabhupada says that I would like every single living entity in this whole universe to become conscious of Krishna, to become Krishna conscious. And Burijan Prabhu was very surprised. And Srila Prabhupada says, do you think that within the plan of the Lord there is no space for every single one of us in this whole universe? And within the heart of Prabhupada there was space for every single living entity. Do you think there is not one tiny little place for you in the plan and in the mission of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Therefore, it is the mission of every single one of us to take this responsibility upon ourselves, of this mission to our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And then I will tell you a small story before we move on to the questions. Once, I like to tell this story. Srila Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad-gita, Fourth chapter, 33rd verse. He writes that we must ask how to approach the spiritual master humbly and to serve him, just like Krishna, just like Sri Chaitanya wanted to serve Ishvara Puri, and Ishvara Puri wanted to serve Madhavendra Puri, just like Krishna served Sandipani Muni, his spiritual master. He went to the forest to gather firewood and took the most menial service. Him, the Supreme Lord, whom the whole universe serves, but he was himself serving his own spiritual master. It is said that the whole world fears God. Fear God, it is said. He is the one who punishes, sends to hell, throws thunderbolts so nobody sins. Be fearful of God, it is said. Everyone fears God. The name of the Lord should be feared. Even personified fear fears God. But God himself fears his mother Yashoda when she ties him with a string. He wipes his eyes and cries. So everyone fears God, but the Lord fears his devotees. So who's greater? The devotees are so great that the Lord himself serves them. And it is like a transcendental competition. The spiritual master serves Krishna, but Krishna serves his spiritual master, and it is like a transcendental competition. Who serves each other more? Therefore, it is said by Srila Prabhupada that it is important to serve and to question the spiritual master. We must develop a very intelligent approach, not false, not blind faith, but very intelligent faith. When I first joined this movement, everyone criticized me, saying, "We are Christians, you are a fanatic." And I was always saying that the mind is like a parachute. It only works when it is open. So when I first received this knowledge, I wanted to share it naturally with everyone. Because being a guru is not as easy as it seems. Everyone will first criticize you, as Prabhupada says. Then they will question you, and then they will worship you. And it takes some time. It is like a test, a period of trial. When I first joined Krishna consciousness, my family kicked me out. I had to file for divorce. And with time, my mum got cancer. And a few years ago, my mum called me. Why did this happen to me? I gave God my son, and I took her to India. I took her to all the holy places in Mayapur. And in the Ganges, I bathed her, and I said, "Until you learn the Maha Mantra, I will not let you out of the Ganges." And so she sat there for half an hour, learned the Maha Mantra. And at the airport, she was met with garlands, and she was looking at me thinking, "Son, who are you?" And I was saying, "I'm just your son." And she was thinking, "Oh, I was thinking my son has died a long time ago for me, but it turns out that I have so many sons and daughters now." And I said and she said to me, "I must apologize to you, thinking that you are a fanatic, but actually I am the one that's at the fault." And she said that in this month that I was here, I have received so much love and so much warmth. And now she chants Hare Krishna. Therefore, it's very important. Like in the song, it is said, don't stop midway. And the spiritual master gives us this strength so as not to fall down. It's important to use both ways. We must meet our teacher in the middle. It's not that the spiritual master throws us the rope, but we refuse to take it to get out of the river. And some people just don't want to wake up, and no matter how much you try to wake them, it's impossible. And so a person who's too stubborn and doesn't want to accept any other conceptions, it is foolish to be a wise man amongst fools. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya personally picks and selects his missionaries his soldiers. Therefore, it is our mission to become dear to the Lord, to try to help him in distributing this knowledge. Even a tiny drop of mercy, if we get some prasad even, then our mission in life will be successful. Just like through this adapter of the spiritual master, we get connected. And so, satisfying the spiritual master is the secret to success in our lives, full stop. The secret of the spiritual life is to satisfy the spiritual master. Therefore, by any means, we must find a spiritual master and to try to serve him and to satisfy him. Because if he is happy, then Krishna will be happy. And one more story just to illustrate how you shouldn't build a relationship with a spiritual master. So one day, a disciple was riding with his spiritual master on a cart, and all of their things were at the back of the cart. They were driving with the horse, and all of a sudden, the book Bhagavatam falls from the cart, and the student didn't even turn his head. And the spiritual master says, "Why didn't you pick up the book?" And the student said, "Well, master, you didn't say anything to me. You didn't give me any instruction." And the spiritual master said, "Well, it's just assumed that you would just pick up the book. But no, master, you didn't give me an instruction. I just serve your instructions. So now I will tell you, every time something falls from the cart, you will pick up." And so after some time, the horse begins to excretion. It begins to poo on the floor. And so the disciple runs and picks up all of the feces. And the spiritual master says, "You have lost your mind." And the disciple says, "But you told me yourself that anything that falls from the cart, I pick up." And so he didn't engage his intelligence at all. And he was completely confused. So first you tell me to pick up, then you tell me not to pick up. And so you must write me a list. What shall I pick up? What shall I not pick up? And so the spiritual master wrote him a list. "I'll take a pen, I will write down. If a book falls, if anything important falls, pick up. And then leave the rest." And so he gave the student this list. "Therefore, right, so I am on the horse, there will be no more offences." And so they're going further, and all of a sudden, a dog comes and starts to bark at the horse. And the horse stalls, and the spiritual master falls from the cart. And the disciple opens his list, and the student takes out the list and he thinks, "Oh, it says nothing here about picking up this spiritual master." And so they carry on driving. So this is how you should not do. And Srila Prabhupada on a morning walk once said, there was a stream and Srila Prabhupada was finding it very difficult to cross. And so one of the students took his hand and helped him across the stream. And after Srila Prabhupada crossed, he pushed the student very hard, so hard that he went flying. And he fell on the floor. And Prabhupada says, this is an example of impersonalism. This is Mayavada. They only need the spiritual master to cross the stream, and then they don't need the spiritual master anymore. Because sometimes we are using these relationships, and the devotees could be our spiritual masters. We can see, we should see a teacher in everyone. There's a beautiful poem which I like to read. We should always see a part of God in every person. Do not think that you are the best and elevated in everything. Be mindful of the devotees and you will understand everything, because in every person there is the spark of God. Begin to see this. Do not criticize others without any need. Do not be locked up in yourself. Do not look at a flower on its own, because it is only worth something in a bouquet. If you give yourself a high price, nobody will take you. Serve the body and souls of others and completely devote yourself to the process of bhakti. Within a field there are many flowers, and every single one of them has a tiny piece of honey, but he who cannot collect honey cannot understand the taste of honey. Jai. If there are any questions, please ask. Thank you very much, Patri Prabhu. A question from Constantine. You have such incredible charisma. Have you always had it, or have you developed after becoming a devotee? What would you recommend to those who need to develop this charisma? You know, I'm nobody really. What charisma are you talking about? I'd love to serve everybody, but I just give what I can. And with love, and then Krishna gives it back to you. I will embrace the feet of the Lord and begin to destroy the darkness of Kali Yuga. Krishna says, I am the incredible part within everybody, and what you see that is beautiful is only a tiny piece of me. Prabhupada says that if you place an iron nail into the fire, it becomes fire. Similarly, you get the qualities of your association. Therefore, it's important who you are associated with. And before I became a devotee, I was studying everything, from ballet dancing to fire rifles to boxing. I was just learning from everything, and I guess I just got so much of all of this interesting knowledge. But when I came to Krishna consciousness, fortune was a lot more. My life became a lot more fortunate, and I became part of the movement of Sankirtan. And at that time, in the 90s, we had no temple really. We were just sent to the streets, and we had to learn on the go. And it was just for the sake of surviving that we had to go. We had to practice our preaching skills on the go. How do we approach people? How can we reach their hearts? We cannot expect to give people a helping hand until we have touched their hearts. Therefore, we have learned things about psychology and physiology. We had to learn all of this. It's not simply charisma. It is not just something that we press a button in ourselves and we become just like that. Every single one of us is great in our own ways. If we simply just give Krishna as he is, simply, we are not trying to inspire people. We're not trying to interest people too much. We are searching for interested people. If we are trying to imitate, there are many examples like this. The art of management, art of winning friends, how to have influence over people. No, we simply love Krishna, and Krishna will give you intelligence of how to do this. And the best way is to just be yourself. I wish you, my friend, do not fall in spirit if you stumble, and the mercy of the Lord in everything you do. I also wish you, my dear, as part of the poem it is said, I wish you to remain yourself always. And may they laugh at you and give you salt on the wound. And may the Lord bless you as the sun in a time of cloud. And charisma just reveals itself when you are having correct association. And Srila Prabhupada has given us an incredible process, Panchanuga Bhakti, Nama Kirtan, Sadhu Sangha, Mathuravas. If we just follow these paths, step by step with those who are inspired themselves, then you will become inspired, just like this iron nail. No matter how rusty it may be, when it is placed into the fire, all the rust goes away. This is Shakti Namavada. So, have association with devotees. And so the spiritual master is not simply he who gives us diksha and then just goes millions of miles away. We have so many spiritual masters. We can learn from everybody. And charisma is this thing that we develop every day. A tiny drop of honey from everybody. We can learn from everybody. And who is a teacher? And it is said that a person is just talking with somebody and he can feel that he is inspired. Malikamala was saying this story. And when she was speaking the story of Caitanya-Caritamrita, and the person was a doctor, psychologist, very influential person, and I can't understand anything. I can't understand anything from this book, but I'm looking at Caitanya-Caritamrita and I can feel he isn't lying to me. I can see he's just speaking the truth. I don't understand anything, but I just know that he is not lying. And she was seeing that the person is genuine. So if you're inspired from a person, you should just listen to your heart and be inspired. And so these sun rays of inspiration starts to rarely enter our heart, then a bit more, and then the full sun rays. And because of these people, we should just stand in their light, in the sunlight of those people, of those who are inspiring us. And so we will continue inspired. Therefore, Prabhupada says, the consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is a movement. It is not a sitting or a standing. It is an eternal movement. And so we must be moving with this sunlight. And the sunlight devotees, we must grab onto their feet and get their warmth. If we are staying in the shadow, we will sit there and think, oh, ISKCON is so bad, everything is lost. And so charisma comes from association, and I wish you great association. There are so many incredible devotees, Valmiki Prabhu, and so much association, you must be drowning in nectar already. Thank you so much. We just have a few minutes for one more question. Tamara is asking, she's already inspired to distribute books, and she's thinking, what chapter in the Bhagavad-gita would interest people who have never heard about this book? I like all the 700 shlokas. They're all fantastic. Doesn't matter whose hands they're in. Paganini can play just on the one string of the violin. But for the beginners, I would say I like the 9th chapter, 2nd verse. Susukham kartamayam. It is that knowledge which gives super happiness. Susukham. I also like the 12th canto. 12th chapter, 17th, 18th verse onwards. It describes how to become dear to God. If people are interested, how do you become dear to God? Then you will find out, well, what qualities does God like? You must become friend to all living beings, have love, patience, etc. And they will say, oh, how interesting. Oh, how do we develop these qualities? How do you become professional in having a good character? And many people want to know this. Therefore, I will recommend you. What is the 13th chapter, 8th to the 13th verse? What is knowledge? And people are interested. What is knowledge? There is information but no transformation. But actually, knowledge is quality. It is described all the qualities that a human being can get if they read these books. And so this is very interesting to most people. And for me, the first shloka I was told, I was always the officer of the Soviet Union. I was going in my uniform in the metro, and a Krishna devotee with a bald head comes up to me. "Oh, I have an interesting book for you. You are an officer? I have a great book for you." He shows me, he shows me the cover of the book, and says, "Look, this is a war of Kurukshetra, how to correctly carry out the war." And I'm thinking, "Oh, very interesting. Show me, show me." So the first shloka can be used. You just need to know who you're showing it to. So the Bhagavatam is happiness itself. 9th chapter, 2nd verse. Try that. So I understand there is an interesting lecture today. You can prepare your questions. Thank you very much, Patri Babu. An incredible, enjoyable and involving lecture. And Patri Babu will be giving more lectures, so prepare your questions. And Patri Babu has been with us today. Thank you very much. And I remind you that we'll be carrying on our Bhagavatam reading with Valmiki Prabhu. Have a good day, everyone. My obeisances to you, Valmiki Prabhu. Thank you so much for engaging this fallen soul in your service.